Hello learners, welcome to Unit 10 entitled Media and Youth Culture of our MOOC on Media, Cultural Dynamics and Social Change. This particular unit belongs to Module 3 known as Media and Society. In this unit, we will take a closer look at how media influences society and in turn how society shapes media practices and messages. As we move forward, you'll notice that media is not just a tool for communication. It's a powerful space where ideas, identities, and social relationships are constantly being negotiated. In this unit, we will explore some associated issues that arise from the deep and complex relationship between media and society. We'll start by discussing how youth, one of the most active and impressionable segments of media users, are often portrayed in the media. Next, we'll talk about the uses of media, how individuals turn to different forms of media for information, entertainment, education, or simply to feel connected. This will lead us to the uses and gratifications theory, which helps us to understand that audiences are not passive recipients but active users who choose media according to their personal needs and motivations. From there on, we'll move on to discuss the impact of media, how repeated exposure to certain messages can influence our thoughts, emotions, and even behavior. Closely linked to this is a process of identity construction. We'll see how media platforms, especially in today's digital age, allows people to present, modify, and even reinvent their identities. Finally, we'll discuss the growing need for counseling and media literacy, especially among young users who may face confusion, comparison, or emotional distress from media use. To make these discussions more practical, you can look into two case studies that have been provided in the teaching learning material that illustrate real-life examples of how media shapes and reflects cultural and social change. Along with these specific features, you can also look at the impact of new media, the social networking sites, different streaming platforms, and participatory digital spaces that have redefined how we interact and express ourselves. So as we begin this unit, I invite you to think critically and personally. Like, how do you use media? How has it influenced your identity, your relationships, and the way you see the world? Let's explore these questions together as we unpack the fascinating dynamics of media and society. Now, over the past several years, numerous studies have focused on understanding young people and their experiences. These studies reveal that youth form a distinct social category with their own challenges, behaviors, and ways of engaging with the world. Much of this understanding is rooted in developmental psychology, which examines how young individuals grow physically, emotionally, and socially, and how they build a sense of identity during this transition from childhood to adulthood. Researchers have noted that adolescence can be a complex and often confusing stage of life, filled with uncertainties about one's role, responsibilities, and future. In the present day, young people across the globe have unprecedented access to media, from television and films to social media, digital games, and online platforms. However, the way they use and experience media often varies depending on their cultural, social, and geographical backgrounds. Media now functions not just as a source of entertainment, but also as a vital informational and social tool, helping youth make everyday decisions, stay connected with friends, and form opinions about the world. Interestingly, research suggests that many young people gather more knowledge and cues for behavior from media than from traditional sources like parents or schools. This trend has led scholars to refer to media as a parallel school, emphasizing how media has become an alternative learning space where children and adolescents spend several hours daily absorbing ideas, values, and information that shape their understanding of life and society. Now let us look at the different associated issues. In recent decades, popular media has played a major role in shaping and reinforcing the idea that youth represents a distinct and significant social category. The term youth gained widespread recognition around the 1950s, particularly in industrialized nations, where the experience of growing up was increasingly linked to ongoing economic and political transformations. During this period, youth began to be understood not simply as an age group but as a cultural and social identity influenced by broader social changes. As Simon Fritz notes, the concept of youth first emerged prominently in studies focusing on young, working-class men in Britain and the United States. This demographic, with relatively stable employment and increasing disposable income, had the means to spend more on leisure, fashion, and entertainment. This newfound economic independence enabled them to express individuality and cultural resistance, which in turn gave rise to youth subcultures. However, these subcultures were often perceived as a challenge to social order, marking young people as potentially disruptive forces within society. Initially, this perceived threat was interpreted in physical terms as youth gangs, street violence, or delinquency. But gradually, youth came to symbolize broader moral and cultural anxieties. Sociologist Stanley Cohen has described this phenomenon as a generation of moral panics, periods of heightened public concern over the supposed deviance of young people. Now, media coverage during the post-1950s period reinforced this pattern. Newspaper stories and popular narratives often focused on working-class young men, many of whom were ethnic minorities or indigenous youth, portraying them as a danger to mainstream society. Their distinct clothing styles, rebellious attitudes, and associations with violence, drugs, or political apathy were sensationalized, creating a stereotype that came to dominate public perception. Yet, as researchers point out, these depictions represented only a small fraction of the youth population. Many young people lived ordinary lives, but their stories rarely made headlines. The result was a distorted media image that equated youthfulness with instability, rebellion, and social risk. Now let us try to look at the media portrayal of youth. How the media portrays the youth. Beyond portraying youth as a social threat, the media has also depicted them as symbols and victims of modernity, caught in the turbulence of a rapidly changing world. Drawing from developmental psychology, early approaches framed adolescence as a period of crisis and transformation, where individuals were expected to complete certain normative tasks, such as forming an identity before entering stable adulthood. Research further indicates that early representations of youth, particularly during the 1950s and 1960s, they were shaped by a masculine and Western bias. Youth was typically imagined through the lens of white, middle class, male experiences in industrialized societies. This narrow imagery, which equated youth with optimism, freedom, and the promise of adulthood, became a mythic template for representing all young people regardless of their actual cultural or economic realities. It reflected the belief that youth was merely a transitional phase leading to a secure and successful adulthood, an idea deeply tied to the social stability of that era. However, by the 1990s, this narrative began to shift. Economic insecurity, unemployment, and social fragmentation meant that adulthood no longer represented stability or certainty. The youth of this period, they were portrayed as navigating a mediated and unstable world, struggling to find meaning and direction. Media narratives began to highlight the anxieties and vulnerabilities of young people who were growing up in an age of information overload, consumerism, and technological dependence. In the 21st century, youth are increasingly represented as part of a global postmodern culture. They are seen as both the hope and the victims of contemporary society, active agents who perform their identities through media participation, yet also individuals overwhelmed by societal pressures and unrealistic ideals. As Henry Giroux observes, today's youth engage in a cultural performance of identity and political agency, using media spaces to express themselves, challenge norms, and seek belonging. Still, they are often portrayed as being captivated by technology, aspiring to perfection through digital self-representation. Now, in the global media landscape, traditional boundaries of youth and adulthood are blurring. The markers that once defined the end of youth, such as marriage, stable employment, or parenthood, are losing their significance. Media representations now promote the idea that youthfulness is timeless, an attitude, lifestyle, or appearance that anyone can adopt, regardless of age. This perpetual celebration of youth serves commercial interests, fueling a culture of consumption where products, trends, and media personalities are continuously refreshed to appear younger and more appealing. Thus, in contemporary media, youth often emerges as a symbol of consumer culture, valued less for real experiences and more for the ideals and markets it represents. They are simultaneously portrayed as a promise of the future, the victims of modernity, and a problem to be managed, a reflection of society's ongoing struggle to define what it truly means to be young in a rapidly changing world. Now let us look at the different uses of media. Cultural studies have long shown that media plays a crucial role in the formation of youth subcultures, distinct cultural groups created by young people to express identity, manage social tensions, and respond to societal pressures. Influenced by both media experiences and peer group dynamics, young people often transform their frustrations or insecurities into creative cultural expressions. These are visible in their fashion choices, language, music preferences, and behavior, all of which serve as symbolic acts of belonging and resistance. And this phenomenon, commonly referred to as a youth phenomenon, is not unique to the present generation. Historically, young people have used culture to define themselves against mainstream norms. For example, ethnographic studies of biker and hippie groups in Britain during the 1960s and 1970s reveal how these youth communities they use lifestyle and fashion as tools of identity and protest. Bikers, threatened by the growing influence of the Japanese motorcycle industry, they took pride in maintaining their British-made motorcycles and celebrated themselves as urban rebels or outlaws, preserving what they saw as authentic traditions. Similarly, street culture, which emerged largely among working-class young men in industrialized nations, became a form of symbolic resistance against the dominant middle-class values of their parents and society. It was a way of expressing alienation and powerlessness by rejecting conventional norms and asserting their own style and voice. The term subculture, often used to describe these movements, was originally coined in sociological discourse to label this new unconventional working class youth. Cultural theorists like Hebdig argue that this youth subcultures developed as a response to the loss of traditional community and identity in modern industrial societies. Subcultures, according to him, symbolize both defiance and vulnerability, a creative yet fragile effort by young people to reclaim meaning in a world that seemed to marginalize them. Media exposure, Hebdig notes, played a central role in shaping these cultural identities, offering young people new ideas, images, and possibilities for self-expression. The media, in turn, began to reflect and commercialize these subcultures. The British New Wave films of the 1960s, it portrayed working-class youth and their struggles, while television and magazines popularized a biker image, complete with black leather jackets as a visual shorthand for rebellion. Another youth subculture, the mods, known for their stylish dress and love for pop music, they soon found their look absorbed into mainstream media, fashion, and music programs. Later studies show that subcultures continued to emerge around short-lived musical trends which were known as taste cultures. So this was researched by Sarah Thornton on the club culture, and she called them as taste cultures. These were constantly influenced by the media's portrayal of music, nightlife, and youth lifestyles, leading to the continuous reinvention of youth identities. Thus, the relationship between youth and media is interactive and cyclical. Media both shapes and is shaped by young people's cultural expressions. Now let us look at the different aspects of the uses and gratifications theory. So the uses and gratifications theory, it offers a valuable perspective for understanding how and why young audiences engage with media. According to this approach, media users are viewed as active participants, not passive consumers. They make deliberate choices about which media to use based on the individual needs, desires, and motivations. These needs might include seeking information, entertainment, social connection, emotional release, or personal identity reinforcement. This theory also suggests that audiences with similar social or cultural backgrounds often share common media preferences and patterns of use. Therefore, the central questions researchers explore are: why do people choose certain media forms over others? And what kind of satisfaction or rewards do they expect to gain? Recent research applying this theory to children and adolescents, it has focused on the use of violent media content. Findings indicate that young people who feel isolated or disconnected from their peers, families, or schools are more likely to seek out websites and media featuring violence. So, this behavior may serve as an outlet for the feelings or alienation or frustration. Additionally, studies show that individuals with sensation-seeking personalities, those who crave excitement or intense experiences, tend to consume violent or aggressive media more frequently. This trend is especially noticeable among the young males, who often use media violence as a substitute for real-world thrill-seeking. Their engagement with violent content does not always lead to real aggression, but it can serve as a form of psychological compensation or emotional stimulation. In essence, the users and gratifications framework helps us understand that young people turn to media not merely for leisure, but to fulfill deeper emotional, psychological, and social needs. So whether it is to explore identity, cope with stress, or feel a sense of empowerment, media serves as both a mirror and a tool through which youth interpret and navigate their world. Now let us look at the impact of media. Recent research highlights that media has a profound influence on the everyday lives, values, and behaviors of young people. Studies show that parents today are generally more permissive about their children's media use compared to earlier generations. However, there remains a noticeable difference between the type of media children use at home and what they're exposed to in school environments. And media usage also varies significantly depending on age, gender, and generation. As adolescents they grow older, their dependence on digital media, especially the internet, increases. Patterns of media use often differ across genders. The girls tend to engage more in social networking and communication, while boys just spend more time on online gaming and other interactive entertainment. So internet has also evolved into a commercial hub where many young users engage in online shopping, sometimes even making purchases with their parents' bank details, occasionally without permission. And surveys suggest that today's youth expect to shop online more frequently than their parents as they grow older, reflecting the changing consumer habits. Moreover, young people increasingly consume television, films, and music through online platforms, signaling a shift from traditional media to digitally mediated content consumption. Advertising on these platforms plays a crucial role in shaping young people's aspirations and lifestyles. Interestingly, despite being surrounded by materialistic media messages, many adolescents are found to associate emotional and social values, such as friendship, love, and helping others, with material possessions. This demonstrates how advertising and commercial media subtly intertwine emotional fulfillment with consumerism, influencing how youth perceive happiness, success, and social belonging. Now let us try to understand the relationship between media and identity construction. Now, media plays a central role in shaping how young people understand and construct their identities, including their gender, sexual, and ethnic identities. Through repeated exposure to specific messages, adolescents begin to form habits, they begin to form beliefs about who they are and what role they're expected to play in the society. Media provides powerful messages about what it means to be male or female, often presenting highly stereotyped portrayals. Men are frequently shown as strong, assertive, and dominant, while women are often depicted as emotional, nurturing, or dependent. These portrayals reinforce traditional gender roles and influence the career aspirations, self-image, and social expectations of adolescents. So, although some progress has been made towards more balanced representations, women remain underrepresented in many media forms. The persistence of stereotypical depictions, such as associating women with domestic roles and men with power or authority, continues to shape young people's understanding of gender norms. However, not all youth conform to these images. Many adolescents actively seek non-stereotypical role models in films, in television, and other social media, finding inspiration in individuals who defy conventional gender expectations. Now, video games also contribute to gender identity. Most games are still designed with male audiences in mind, featuring themes of violence, competition, and speed. Even educational software often follows similar patterns, subtly reinforcing gendered preferences. Adolescent magazines further strengthen gender identities by promoting ideas about body image, fashion, beauty standards, and lifestyle trends, which can sometimes lead to body dissatisfaction or unrealistic self-expectations. Now, adolescence is also a time of significant physical and emotional change. And many young people, they turn to media for information about sexuality and relationships, especially when such topics are not openly discussed at home or in school. Magazines and television programs often provide content on romance, attraction, sexual behavior, guiding young people's understanding of intimacy. However, this information is not always realistic or healthy. Girls, for example, that often look to romantic films, television shows, or novels to learn about love and relationships, which can foster idealized expectations of romance and gender roles. Meanwhile, music videos, pornography, and popular entertainment frequently convey sexual values that conflict with parental or cultural norms, leading to confusion about appropriate sexual conduct. Now, media also influences how adolescents perceive ethnic and cultural identities. Representations of ethnicity in mainstream media are often stereotypical or limited, either reinforcing prejudices or occasionally attempting to challenge them. And many media outlets underrepresent minority communities, leading young audiences to internalize biased or incomplete understandings of other cultures. For adolescents who lack exposure to cultural diversity in their daily lives, media becomes the primary source of information about different ethnic groups. Unfortunately, portrayal of minorities are often linked to negative stereotypes, such as depicting them as victims, criminals, or violent individuals. And such kind of portrayals can foster fear, intolerance, and discrimination among the viewers, while also impacting how minority youth perceive themselves. Research has shown that films, in particular, exert strong influence on ethnic identity perceptions. The repetition of stereotypical images over time shapes both majority and minority viewers' understanding of race and culture. While some contemporary media efforts strive for authentic and inclusive storytelling, The overall landscape still reflects ongoing challenges in representing ethnic diversity fairly. Thus, media not only entertains but also acts as a socializing force, shaping how young people see themselves and others. Through its powerful imagery and narratives, it helps construct identities, sometimes empowering but often reinforcing stereotypes that youth must learn to critically examine and challenge. Now let us try to look into the impact of new media. So the emergence of the World Wide Web revolutionized communication and access to information across the world. With the development of internet browsers, the web quickly became an essential part of daily life. And according to researchers Victor C. Strasburger and Barbara J. Wilson, the internet serves as a vast and dynamic source of information and interaction through various tools and platforms like email, bulletin board systems, chat groups, convergence of visual, audio, and textual content, and so on and so forth. So the evolution from the early version of the web, which was known as Web 1.0 to Web 2.0, it marked a major transformation in how users interact with online content. Web 1.0 was largely static, offering one-way communication where users could only consume content. In contrast, Web 2.0 introduced user-generated content and interactive platforms such as blogs, podcasts, wikis, and RSS feeds, allowing users to create, collaborate, and share their own materials. This participatory digital culture is often linked with the open source movement, which promotes accessibility and community-driven development. Young users have particularly embraced these technologies, building digital portfolios that express their creativity, interests, and identities. Some youth use the web confidently to create and share original content, while others primarily use it for information retrieval and social interaction. In short, new media has transformed youth culture, offering vast educational and creative potential, while also demanding critical awareness and digital responsibility. Young people today are not only consumers of media, they're also active participants shaping the digital world, navigating both its promises and perils. Now let us look at the peer group influence. Adolescence is a stage where peer influence becomes particularly strong, often outweighing parental guidance in shaping preferences and behavior. Young people spend a significant amount of time with their friends, and this closeness influences their media choices and consumption patterns. Many adolescents engage with specific types of media simply to feel accepted within their peer groups or to maintain a sense of belonging. Media thus becomes a reflection of peer culture, a world distinct from that of adults. This difference is noticeable when young adults struggle to understand teenage preferences such as popular TV shows, the latest music trends, or new gaming fads. For adolescents, engaging with these forms of media is a way to express autonomy with solidarity with their own generation. Now, music, for example, it often serves as a social connector, allowing teens to feel part of a collective identity, even when they are physically apart. Similarly, advertisements targeted at youth promote fashion, cosmetics, and food products that align with current trends, reinforcing a sense of what is cool within peer circles. And possessing these items, it becomes a symbol of social belonging, while not having them can lead to feelings of exclusion or ridicule. Now, with exposure to nearly 20 advertisements per hour, young consumers these days are constantly encouraged to buy products that promise popularity and social acceptance. And this relentless marketing, it creates both confusion and pressure among the adolescents, who often feel compelled to acquire the latest items to maintain their group identity. Now, marketing researcher Martin Lindstrom has categorized young audiences based on their patterns of trend adoption. The first category are the frontrunners, who are the independent, the experimental individuals who introduce new trends and set the tone for youth culture. The second category are the leading group. They are the popular trendsetters who follow the frontrunners and are admired by the peers for their choices. Then another category are the followers. They are the largest group who adopt trends only after seeing them accepted by the leading group and frontrunners. And lastly are the passive group, the individuals who do not actively participate in trend culture, but they occasionally try to fit in. This categorization, it shows that media consumption among youth is not just about entertainment. It is also about social positioning and identity. And whether consciously or unconsciously, adolescents use media as a tool to negotiate belonging, express individuality, and navigate the expectations of their peer networks. Here emerges the need for counseling in such cases. In today's digital age, guidance and counseling have become essential components of education, particularly when it comes to how young people engage with various forms of media. Schools should take an active role in teaching students how to critically and responsibly use media, especially the internet, where television, films, music, and other platforms converge into one vast digital space. When students they use search engines like Google for academic purposes, they often demonstrate a growing awareness of how to verify information and access credibility. Contrary to the common adult perception that young people are naive and easily influenced, many youths are actually conscious of the risks associated with television and the internet. So while they may still be impressionable and somewhat vulnerable, they often take reasonable precautions to protect themselves online, and they do not always feel directly threatened or helpless in the digital environment, but instead show a sense of confidence and self-reliance in navigating it. And this generation, having grown up surrounded by technology, they have developed impressive digital fluency and multitasking skills. Many are capable of chatting online, watching TV, and using mobile phones simultaneously. Such multitasking abilities not only reflect their adaptability, but may also benefit them in future work and learning environments. However, adults' concerns often lie in the content that young people access, such as violent films, explicit websites, or online interactions with strangers who may have harmful intentions. Social networking platforms, while offering opportunities for communication, can also expose young users to serious dangers like online predators or deceptive relationships. So as the media and digital industries continue to expand, young audiences remain their primary targets, driving huge profits through advertisements, content creation, and entertainment platforms. The ethical responsibility behind these business practices, however, is not always clear. This makes it even more important for parents, teachers, and counselors to step in with effective empathetic strategies that help young people develop critical thinking, self-control, and digital literacy. Counseling must aim to empower them to enjoy media creativity and responsibly without falling prey to its potential harms. So, dear learners, as we come to the end of this unit on media and youth culture, let us pause and reflect on what we have explored together. Throughout this unit, we have seen how deeply intertwined the lives of young people are with media in all its forms, traditional and new. The discussions have shown that media is not just a source of entertainment or information, but a powerful force that shapes how young people think, behave, and identify themselves within society. We began by understanding how the idea of youth itself has evolved. First viewed as a distinct social category, then as a cultural and moral concern, and today as a symbol of consumption and aspiration. The media's portrayal of youth has often been contradictory, sometimes depicting them as symbols of hope and progress, and at other times as rebels or threats to social order. Through these portrayals, media influences not just how young people are perceived, but also how they perceive themselves. We have also tried to explore how youth actively use media, guided by the uses and gratifications theory, to fulfill personal, social, emotional needs, whether for information, identity, connection, or entertainment. From music and films to online spaces, young people are both creators and consumers of meaning, shaping their own subcultures in response to the changing social world around them. As we move forward, we examine the concept or the complex impacts of media on gender roles, sexuality, ethnic identity, and personal values. Equally significant is the role of peer influence in advertising, which together shape young people's choices from fashion and food to lifestyle and attitudes. Finally, we reflected on the need for guidance and counseling for parents, educators, and institutions to work together in nurturing responsible and critical media uses. It is essential that young people learn not only how to access information, but also how to evaluate, question, and interpret it wisely. As you complete this unit, remember that media is both a tool and a teacher. It can empower you to express, connect, and transform, but it can also require awareness and critical thinking to use it responsibly. As learners and future communicators, your challenge is to engage with media, not just as consumers, but as conscious participants in the cultural and social changes shaping our world today. Let media be your ally in learning, creativity, and self-discovery, used not merely to imitate trends, but to inspire transformation in yourself and in society. Thank you.